So Steve, we always have guests come on from whether it's HPE, Dell, Nutanix, Microsoft, it doesn't matter, but a lot of guests come from these vendors who have a lot of really good and interesting perspectives. But what they always do is talk about, well, research tells us this, or our research has told us that, and this is how we inform decisions, right? But they're not always as connected to the customer and what's really going on in the world, versus those companies that are directly interfacing, or folks that are directly interfacing. So our next guest is a really fun one because first off, she's a senior VP of cloud at Persistent Systems, and we'll get into who she is and what she does in a second. But Persistent Systems is they go help companies or enterprises, businesses of all sizes do things and do things better from a technology perspective. So they talk to more folks over the course of a day, customers over the course of the day, than a lot of guests we have do over the course of a month. So really, really excited to have Dominique Bastos from Persistent Systems. Dominique, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks. So before we get into all of that, Steve, did you want to add something?
No, I'm good. You're doing
all
fine.
Right. Yeah. I usually talk too much. Before we jump into the conversation, Dominique, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do at Persistent, who Persistent is, and all that neat stuff.
Sure. So I'm the Senior Vice President Cloud, specifically for leading the AWS business unit for Persistent Systems. I joined recently in August, and I prior to that was with AWS for almost 7 years in various roles. My experience actually spans many, many years, too many to say out loud because then I'll date myself. But I come from a technical background, from an engineering degree, industrial engineering and robotics, and complemented that with an MBA in international business and finance, because I had an interest in understanding problems, solving them with analysis, but also a little bit of being out there, like you said, in front of customers and being able to shape, advise businesses. I went into consulting for a while. Long story short, I ended up wanting to go work for a technical consulting firm. And having worked at GE in actual engineering work, I had to pick an area to focus on. And I didn't know what to pick. So I picked data because I'm a little bit very structured and organized and big math person. So I picked databases before it was a thing to worry about data or embrace data or love data. So I became a DBA. That's what they were called back in the day. I would go into the rooms with a big fluffy jacket to stay warm because the server room was freezing, and write config scripts. The teams would withhold passwords from me for the front end stuff, or the back end stuff. They were afraid I was going to crash things, but I think I did okay. I was that was kind of my journey coming up in tech, was being a DBA and focused on Sybase, Oracle, SQL Server, kind of like the ones back in the day.
Time out. You said you didn't want to date yourself, but you just said Sybase. You dated yourself.
Okay, delete. Remove that. Exactly.
Oh,
it's pretty scary. So exactly. I think also kind of dating myself before, I think it was Bill Imran was the author of the data warehousing books, which I religiously read every single one of them. I traveled around the world, kind of designing data warehouses for large institutions, some large financial institutions, global ones. I did a couple of startups and had the opportunity to take kind of that knowledge of being a DBA person who then got promoted or asked to be a project manager, because I was good with being the glue between the front end, the back end, the database, the customer requirements. Then soon kind of became what they call the client partner. And then next thing you know, somebody saying we should go start a company. So became a founder, And my focus was always on delivery excellence. And I don't know if that goes back to my nature of things being structured and data and analysis, but that's kind of where my heart was, like making sure that as we're building these teams, they're really listening to the customer need and building for that. And again, a trend that we started seeing now, right? So very long-winded way to say that, you know, my time at AWS was magical, to say the least, because I joined at a time when early 2016, you know, it was really starting to accelerate its growth. And I was called by somebody at AWS and said, you need to come join us. And I was like, I'm not going to join a big company. Are you crazy? I like working with startups and building teams. They're like, no, you're really going to like this. I said, I don't think so. They're probably going to spit me out in 2 seconds because I don't have a filter. So they flew me to Seattle, and I did what they call the loop, and absolutely was in love with the entire everything, the culture, everything. And within, I think, a week and a half, I got an offer. And I was at dinner actually with my daughter and a friend and her daughters. And I got a call from the recruiter and said, you know, we've just sent you an offer in your email. Can you please take a look? And then I kind of looked at it, came back to the dinner table, sat down, and I said, oh, I think I'm going to go work for AWS. Like, what does that mean? And I said, I don't know, but it should be fun. And it actually was a lot of fun. It was an incredible experience in building, in learning, in really getting to understand the journey that people took from pre-cloud to moving into the cloud, to moving up the stack, to adopting AI ML services. And I love that I had firsthand opportunity, for example, to work with News Corporation. Oh, wow. I absolutely adore them, and they know this. They're my favorite. Well, I can't say my favorite customer because I'm the other. No. Like, wait. But anyway, it was. I had the opportunity to have News Corporation, Coca-Cola, Intercontinental Exchange Group, some pretty big customers that I worked with at my time at AWS that have gone through a lot of changes through their journeys, and having the honor to support them in that and see how enterprises of their size have evolved and stay on top of the curve, right? All different industries. I think, I've been very fortunate. The reason I decided to make a change and step away from AWS and join Persistent Systems, which is where I am now, is what Persistent Systems is. And the stage that they're at was very attractive to me in terms of what I can bring to the table and what they're looking to do. So I found a really good fit there. Persistent Systems is actually what you would call a digital engineering firm that provides services and solutions. They've been around for 32 years. So it's a very well-established company. They were started in Pune in India, and I had the absolute pleasure of being there a few weeks ago for about 2 weeks for leadership meeting. And so Persistent Systems, what they do is the same thing that I'm passionate about, which is understand the problems that customers are trying to solve, and then bring the solutions, the consulting, the advisory services needed to solve those problems. So that's me, very long-winded, and kind of a snippet on Persistent Systems.
So you've really watched this market evolve, right? When you joined AWS 7 years ago, whatever it was, right? As an IT guy, I had two choices. I could build on-prem, I could go to the cloud, and maybe I'll run some mixture. But today, man, we have on-prem, we have enterprises that are spanning multiple clouds. We have as a service with things like GreenLake and Apex from Dell. And then we have the rise of the edge, right? So what are your customers seeing? How are you what are the big problems they're trying to solve when it comes to, how am I managing cloud as part of my virtual enterprise infrastructure?
I mean, I think the thing that's really stood out post the pandemic surge and now facing the economic situation is the complexity that people find in their environments, right? You nailed it. I mean, there's hybrid, there's multi-cloud, there's, companies that are born in the cloud, legacy companies that are still trying to determine how or if they want to take advantage of the cloud. But one thing that definitely I've seen is there's complexity in every environment that you mentioned. And what I'm seeing now more than anything is people who have decided to take that cloud journey and invest in cloud. Some of them are starting to kind of think about the cost and say, where can I optimize the cost and what can I do differently? I had lifted and shifted some workloads. Do we need to take a step back and re-architect, refactor, deprecate applications? There's new technologies and ways to create applications that are solving some business problems that they carried from legacy to the cloud. The same, I would say, using old school terms, functionality, the same business requirements, without thinking through, can this be thought of differently? Can we leverage AI/ML services to solve this problem? Because we have a world of data that we're capturing from our customers. Are we really taking advantage of the analytics that we could be getting, the insights? And I think the biggest thing I'm seeing now is they understand there's an opportunity there. They just don't know how to tackle it, right? But they definitely also understand there's a problem, unfortunately, with the financial situation of the world. And so they need to be thoughtful about their spend. And they're really looking to, in my assessment, is make sense of the complexity, kind of simplify processes, simplify interactions with the businesses that tap into their data, definitely simplify interactions with the consumers, their end customers. But an opportunity to look at how to solve the problem of whether it be performance or cost optimization in having made the change from the system that they were used to now living in a different environment, because it touches on everything. It touches on the resources. It touches on the actual hardware systems. And you mentioned edge, was I running this request on this piece of hardware and, it wasn't optimized because it didn't bring me the data in the timeliness that I needed it or the amount that I needed it. Well, if you're going to leverage machine learning algorithms, can it even run on that piece of hardware? Can it support that? So then now you introduce edge computing, right? And for some of us, that's like obvious, but it's not obvious. It's not obvious for some enterprises that are super, ingrained in how they're doing things. They're successful. There's no need to change. But I think the change is going to be coming for everybody. And, really the SMBs, the small, medium businesses are the ones that could really take advantage, I think, more quickly of the opportunity to take advantage of, and I'll say like AWS services or different cloud services that are already built for you. And you just kind of tap into that power.
Yeah. Do you find that, you a couple of things in there that I found really interesting. The first is the utilization of AI/ML. I hear a lot from customers about they start these digital transformation projects. A big component of that is, sometimes they call it, they say it's machine learning when it's really like deep analytics, but it's like, regardless, it's like there's a huge, these projects get stalled out because there's a skills gap, right? I don't have the IT resources. I don't have the data scientists. I don't have the folks that really get data like you do on staff to help me. Do you find that that performing these functions in the cloud is that much easier for organizations to kind of get over that hump? And that's part one. And part two is, do you find commonality in challenges organizations have in kind of deploying and managing cloud services, regardless of vertical or size or geo? There are a common set of like either mistakes or challenges that are easily overcome if these organizations only knew, kind of thing.
Yeah. So for the first part of your question, I think some of the, and wait, let me make sure I get it right, because I'm already thinking of the second answer. Somebody accused me of that. Like,
No.
process.
No, that's all right. What I was saying was, do you find that the cloud is really that much easier
yes,
for organizations?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And this is, I have zero doubt. Having worked both with, leading customer engagements and working with customers, but also working with service teams and product teams, and actually having the opportunity to see how these services are built and the problems that they're tackling. There's no doubt that performance-wise, cloud offers something that you just can't do on legacy systems. Now, if you're holding, if you're a library and you have volumes of books that are, you just maybe once in a blue moon going to need to access some archaic, book, reference book or whatever. That depends on the use case. But for the most part, and I will generalize, cloud has evolved in such a way that the services, they've thought through the use cases, right? And I'm going to give you an example. I worked with Amazon Textract. That was, I want to say like a bit of my baby. I was helping with the go-to-market on that and leading globally the business development of that. How that helped me was from taking it from the first step, which is they launched the service, to getting feedback, typically with the major hyperscalers or any familiar, big tech company. There's a developer group that quickly finds out, oh, this is launching. So they get it, right? And they start using it. So then you get feedback from them, right? And to see the process of how services are perfected in terms of something like Textract, which is taking a document and digitizing it and using machine learning and natural language processing to extract data and put it in the right place. The use cases it solves are so many, and they're so important, right? Claims processing, loans validation. Think of those things prior to cloud. Picture applying for a mortgage, for a loan, and how many days and the different things you need to photocopy and send in and do this and go in person. That's just one use case. And then, something like a doctor's office visit, right? So my sense is that cloud technologies have been around long enough to move past, let's get your data in the cloud so you could access it faster, and then we'll build APIs so that these different applications can integrate better, to you have your data now, you have it in the cloud. The reason it makes sense to have it in the cloud is because there's going to be access points, not just for you and your data, but now you as a provider of data to these other institutions can share insights and knowledge in a much faster way than you can ever do through data sitting in legacy systems.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like that's like, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, no, it definitely does. So do you find, as companies take these journeys, especially taking advantage of advanced services that they couldn't necessarily turn on in-house, do you find that there are like common gotchas or mistakes that companies make across that, are easily avoidable if only somebody like Dominique told them, hey, watch out for, as you're starting to do your journey, consider these 3 things, or these 5 things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so. It depends what stage, right? So if they're going on an initial journey to the cloud, it's different than if they're in the cloud and wanting to optimize, their cloud footprint. They're already, looking to leverage AI ML services across different workloads. So the first thing I would say is have a strategy for what you're doing in the cloud, because then, and I love planning just because I'm a weirdo that way, but I mean, it makes sense because you can kind of lay out your vision, right? What's your 3 to 5 year vision for this investment you've made in the cloud? Make sure you have a strategy around that, and make sure that, and this almost sounds like, super intuitive and shouldn't be said, but that the right stakeholders are involved in that and supportive of that, right? That I would say is like the first thing. The second thing is, what I'm starting to see, and another reason why I took kind of like the leap to go into a partner organization for a company like AWS, is you don't need to do it alone anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So now you have your strategy and you have your plan, where are you going to start, and what are the gaps in what you have and what you need to get there? And that involves bringing on a partner, right? That involves looking at your internal teams to see where you could leverage some of the institutional knowledge for solving those problems that you're trying to solve. A company like Persistent has deep domain expertise across various verticals for specific reasons. Because when you're solving these problems as you're moving to the cloud, you really don't want to just copy what was done before. You have an opportunity now to think through how are my customers now interacting with data. I mean, behavior has changed. We all, like, it's super cliche to say that, the unicorns, when they, nobody ever, I'm a New Yorker, never thought taxis were going to go out. I mean, they're still there, but Uber, right? And so there's create your strategy, look at the gaps between where you want to go and where you are, and what's available for you to solve getting that done. And that includes partnerships, that includes, maybe hiring some roles that you never thought to hire because they weren't important when you were first building the company. And then finally, I would say, understanding that the cloud journey takes time, right? Everybody seems to be living from quarter to quarter on numbers and profits, and it absolutely, that's how businesses run. But when you're making a transformational change, things sometimes are going to go, like costs are going to go like this before they go back down. It'll take a couple of years to see some of the benefits of having invested in a cloud transformation. Sometimes it's immediate, right? So like if you cut down claims processing on documents from a week and a half to a few minutes, guess what? You're going to be acquiring more customers right away. Because the second, and DocuSign was one of our customers, the second you have something that you can complete on the phone, if you're a busy person, like I'm very busy. I did my entire buying my house on my phone.
Yeah.
So there's going to be trade-offs in how long you're going to see to recoup, get the ROI. But I would say be clear on the strategy, be clear on what you need, and then also maybe look at prioritizing where you're going to actually execute and what you're expecting to see as a result, and work backwards from what your customers want, so that you're aware of like the approach you should take. If everything's perfect and there's really no value add to changing something, then maybe focus on something else. But I think the things that people could do better is really treating this transformation, because it's a massive investment. It's a massive shift in culture. I mean, it involves a lot. Not putting in a strategy, like a real strategy around, where are you going? What do you need? And also understanding change management is going to be needed. What is our communication internally about this massive change that's going to happen? I don't think people really embrace like the need to do a top-down, fully comprehensive strategy around their cloud transformation.
Let me ask you this, so I'm doing a cloud transfer, or maybe I'm starting with a digital transformation and it evolves into a cloud transformation. I don't always know when I'm in over my head, right? What's the right time, and what are the signs that I need help, that I need to come to somebody like a Persistent? What's the right time to engage you, and how do I know?
I mean, I would say before you start, and the reason, and I'll explain why. We've developed some solutions for different verticals or use cases, right? That can easily help you accelerate where it minimize the cost of what you're doing and get you there faster, right? You're not going to know, and that's just one example, but my point is, before you start, so you can architect it the right way, right? Because you're going to have a strategy, but in that strategy, you're going to decide, I'm going to do this digital transformation on these workloads or on this process, right? In doing that, you're going to need to redesign or look at where you are now and where it should go. That involves architecting it. And in architecting it, then you can decide on what is the right solution, what is the right technology. A lot of people come to the table with ideas that we're going to make this change with biases on things they've used before, or so-and-so, it seems to be working for them, we'll use that too. Not necessarily, because your environment looks completely different. And one of the things that we do at Persistent, which I would hope all good companies that help customers do, is we do assessments, right? So we would take a look at your environment and do an assessment of your footprint on, tech footprint on legacy, on cloud. Are you hybrid, multi-cloud? Have you not even begun? Are you already in the cloud and you're doing a digital transformation just for this business case? We would assess all angles on that and then say, here's what we recommend going forward, right? And this is how you should kind of build out on that. If you've already started without getting, and you're not sure, and you're just like, oh, I've been reading about, not that there's anything wrong with reading what's on the internet, but it's kind of like self-diagnosing.
Yeah. I blocked WebMD from my browser because of that. Hey, real quickly, Dominique, and I want to ask you something. Kind of shifting gears, but it's a really relevant part of your story and actually part of tech, right? I mean, you talk about being a DBA, growing up as a DBA, and you didn't date yourself, but you said Sybase. So we're at least going back to the 90s with Sybase, right? Early 2000s, early 2000s. And you're female, and especially in the DBA world, women, females are greatly under represented in this industry in general, but even in some of these roles, like, as developers, as DBAs, I don't know if we call them DBAs anymore, data scientists. Tell us a little bit about kind of your journey, the challenges, and walk us through that, because I really admire folks who, I'm guessing, had to overcome a lot of biases and other challenges in the industry to get where they are. So tell us about your journey a little bit and kind of what that means and all that.
So, and she's probably going to kill me for saying this, but I think it started with my mom. I was a big tomboy, and I enjoyed playing soccer, football with my brother. I enjoyed taking my skateboard and kind of figuring out how to make it a doll stroller, because I had like both things going on.
Yeah.
And but what I really liked to do was, just solve problems, go in the backyard, figure out like what's the strongest hut that you could make out of these materials. So I've always enjoyed that. And I remember telling my mom I was going to go to engineering school, and she's like, no, that's kind of for boys. I was like, and my mom's not that person anymore. I think I've kind of helped her evolve, but I think given, we come from a Catholic Lebanese background, and my dad he was Cuban. So just culturally also, I think, even though I don't think my family is pretty, forward thinking in terms of, we have so many strong women in the family. And my mom was one of them, which is pretty ironic. She was driving race cars before it was a thing. She helped found Interpol in Beirut. So she's pretty badass. And yet she's telling me, don't go to engineering school. And I think it was more because she thought, this isn't going to be a good experience for you. So of course I went to engineering school, because I was like, yeah, tell me not to do that. So I think my experiences were pretty interesting in that there weren't many women doing, there were more women in industrial engineering than in the other engineering disciplines, but not many women really. I actually wanted to do design cars. That was kind of like my dream. I wanted to go to industrial engineering school to study ergonomics, to design cars, and got sidetracked. But I think back then it was a bit challenging. And luckily I have a strong nature. I would go to class at the beginning of, the semester with my syllabus. And, one time I had an engineering teacher actually say, this is thermodynamics. Are you sure you're in the right class? And I said, yeah. And I showed him my syllabus, and he said, well, cheerleading's down the hall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I kind of, I just looked at him. I said, excuse me. And I went and sat down, and I actually decided to sit front and center. And I don't know if it's my culture or, like the combination of all like Lebanese and Cuban, and, I was born in DC, but whatever, kind of kicked in and go, I'm going to show this guy. So I made it a point to really do well in that class, to show him, right? So I basically got the top grade in the class. I don't think I missed a single question on any test. I ate the book. I wanted to prove a point, right? Which is kind of sad that that was my motivation. And then he asked me,
it's sad that it had to be your motivation. You shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place.
I was yeah, exactly. And at the end of the class, he asked me, would you be my graduate, my TA, my teacher's assistant? And I said, I don't know, because you really could have, if I were a different person, I may have never gone to engineering school.
Yeah.
That might have been it for me, but you know what? I am going to do it because I want to show the girls coming into this class, I'm the teacher's assistant in thermodynamics. So that kind of like, that day changed me a little bit, because having grown up with a brother, having seen a mom who was very, very ahead of her time, even though she was, trying to protect me from going, I wasn't used to that. Yeah. And I kept coming up against it. My first job was in a company, huge Fortune, I think they're Fortune 100, Don't go to my LinkedIn, but I remember somebody there kind of, again, dating myself, making photocopies, insinuating that I would do, man, I was a technical sales engineer, insinuating that I was kind of like the copy girl or something. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal. And doing work in Latin America for data warehouses also, one time, and it was my company. I was one of the founders, but again, wanting to make sure things go well, I involved myself in this huge data warehousing project. And I remember we had a room, there were 9 directors from this company who flew in from all over my team. And I will say it was in Colombia. It was in Bogota. And I'm making myself a coffee, and guy comes and stands next to me, one of the, big shots, and says, "Oh, I'll take mine. Can you serve me one as well?" And I was like, "Absolutely. Would you like anything in it? Cream, sugar?" He's like, "Yeah, maybe a little bit of cream, a little bit of sugar." I'm like, "Okay." Like, "Oh, let me know if it's okay." "Oh, it's okay. Fine." "Oh, great, great." So he goes and sits down, and then I go to the front and stand up there, introduce myself, and kick it off. The guy turned like all shades of crazy. And but this is how I dealt with it, was I'm not going to try to put him in his place in that moment. I'm going to lead by example, right? So earlier in my career, there was a lot of that. I will say that working in AWS, for example, I didn't experience that. And I don't know if it's because it was an American company. I don't know if it was, and even not that mine wasn't, but I wasn't dealing with like traveling around the world and getting basically talked down to. And I was respected. And I think obviously prior to AWS, you gain respect by proving yourself.
Yes.
No matter what your pronouns are, right? You deliver, you know what you're talking about, you gain respect, you earn trust. And I always believe that, and I still do, but I do believe we have a long way to go with giving young ladies and women a bigger opportunity to actually get out there and show themselves and have the ability to prove themselves. I am not a mousy person. So if I'm in a meeting room, and I hate saying this, this has happened to me a lot in my career with 10 men, they think I'm not going to speak up because I'm a woman. If I'm talking and somebody talks over me, we'll deal, like I'm not done yet. Right. Good. And I think I've had interesting experiences where really, if I, it could really break somebody. I've had someone tell, just really just be nasty and say, "What do you know? You're just, leave this to the men," type things. Yeah. And again, not here in the context of any of the companies that I've mentioned, but those types of things, I think right now companies are putting in the effort and have been putting in the effort to level the playing field on opportunities for women. When I first, and I can say this because it happened and it's a fact, my very first job with this big Fortune company, they put me through 7 interviews, and every single interview I would come away like, just, okay, that was fun. It was just like a crazy beatdown of back and forth hypothetical situations. How would you deal with this? A year and a half into the job, I found out from the only other woman in a different role, because I became one of the guys, basically, that they were trying to weed me out. They wanted to hire a man. They did not want to hire me. I was in charge of all of Latin America, like a certain, that was like the role that I was interviewing for. And they just couldn't poke any holes in it. So the fact that she told me that, like even that little conversation changed me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because here I felt like, wow, I went through all this year and a half thinking they saw me as one of them.
Yeah.
But really they were trying to
they were trying to exclude you in the first place. If you had, if when you look back and you look at your kind of ascension, you know, it's your journey, you know, for females, women that are listening today, right, that are in IT, that are in this industry, is there a, you know, a bit of advice you would give them to, you know, based on your kind of learned experiences and what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as I said before, you know, regardless of your gender, preparation and confidence in what you're bringing to the table is key, right? So assuming you have that, you know, find the opportunities where you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, maybe because it just looks like it's not going to be, you know, inclusive, and give it a chance, because you never know how you could turn it around for yourself or for somebody else, right? So step into those roles, apply for those roles, discuss your interest in those roles, and just show up for it. My daughter is doing computer science at Stanford University.
Right on.
Never thought this would be, I mean, I never think nothing's possible. I believe in magic. I genuinely believe things can just happen if you really, you know, put your mind to it. But I raised her by myself. And, you know, as a single mom raising a kid in Manhattan, you look at this and I just want to keep her alive and basically off the streets. Like, it's just like, stay away from the bad stuff. And here, you know, now she's second year Stanford University doing computer science, and it was her choice. It was her choice. I asked her, why do you want to do this? Because all I did was provide the credit card for the application fee. I had nothing to do with her college application process because I was heads down working, didn't have the luxury. She does her homework here, I sit here and do my work. And she said, Mom, I want to be able to do a startup. And I was like, okay. And she said, Stanford's really good for that. And I said, well, what kind of startup? By the way, she already did a startup when she was 16, a nonprofit to help the homeless in New York. But she wants to solve big world problems. She wants to use technology, and she wants to use the resources available in more advanced countries and cultures to help, you know, kind of globally bridge some of the gaps where lack of resources are making it impossible for people to get ahead. And I thought, wow, that's great. Like everybody should aspire to do that. And she wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid to forget working for a company. Like, I'm building my company and I'm going to go to Stanford because that's the best place to learn how to do it. Like, that's what I want to see in women. That's what I want to see in young ladies. You know, guys, sorry, but like guys that I know won't even dream of going to a university like Stanford because like, the acceptance rate it's less than 3%.
Well, it sounds like she had some good role models. And Matt, for our next podcast, we're going to bring Dominique's mom on to talk about car racing in Beirut.
My mom would
hook us up. Hey, so we're out of time, but Dominique, thank you very much for the conversation. This was, I learned a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.